Väl, vad är vi? That's not right. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's talk about the W sound. Hi, I'm Josh, your American English guide, and today we are continuing the consonants with the W sound. It's supposed to be double U, meaning two U's put together, and that's how it was traditionally written. And we usually call it the W instead of double U. The W sound is a voiced consonant sound. W, w. We hear nice good vibration from the vocal cords. Now, is there a voiceless version of W? Yes, but you never have to use it. This would be wh, wh, wh. Traditionally, the spelling WH was used to mark this voiceless W sound. For example, what, where, why, and other words like white. Although there are still some speakers in American English who use this sound, almost every single person that I have ever heard speaking American English in my life uses the voiced W sound, and they never use the voiceless W sound, including myself. I do not use the voiceless sound. So to make things easy for you, you never have to use it. So how do we make the W sound? Now, earlier in this course, we saw a lot about the O sound, the U sound, and the diphthong ow. The end position is very, very close to the W. In fact, it basically is a W, except it's not as deep, we would say. O, W, U, W, ow. W, O, W, oo, W, ow, W. Now you don't want to necessarily try to do this as tight and pushed out as possible. It's not W, W. And that leads us to our common mistakes. There are three, and they're all very closely tied together, so you want to be very careful here. The first big mistake is closing too tightly, okay? If you do this, then the air can't really flow. It's too close, it's too tight. Now, there should be some tenseness, of course, but you don't want to make it so tight that it feels like, you're trying to throw your lips across the room or something, right? It's not or something like that. So have them be a little open. There's like a little hole. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Now, the second mistake you want to avoid is you want to make sure that you have enough space inside your mouth. Now, what do I mean by this? My lips are closed, but my jaw is actually kind of open. So if I were to go into the W position, but relax my lips so you can see how open my mouth is, right? Ooh, ooh, So it's not right? It's not like ooh or like that. That's too much. But it's not super closed. It's not like ooh, ooh, ooh. Okay, so you want to kind of have your jaw partially open, more around, say, where you would be saying eh, right? The eh vowel, eh, eh, eh. That's kind of nice and easy. Eh, w, w, eh. Now, the exact tongue position, the tongue isn't as important for this sound because it's almost all in the lips. But the front of the tongue is going to be kind of down and relaxed down in here. If this is your bottom teeth, then your tongue is just going to kind of sit down in here. There might be a little bit of tenseness to kind of hold it into position and make sure it doesn't move. And I will also add that the front part of my tongue, it doesn't really touch anything inside my mouth. It doesn't touch the bottom. It doesn't touch the sides. Doesn't touch these teeth. And of course that is directly tied to the next common mistake, which is probably the single biggest mistake, and that is pronouncing the W sound like a V sound. If you make the first mistake or the second mistake, where your mouth is too closed or your lips are too tight, it's very likely that you'll end up making sort of a V sound anyway. And so that's one reason why we want to avoid those first two mistakes, but even if you are avoiding those first two mistakes, you still might be pronouncing a V sound, and you might not even notice it. For example, instead of saying what, you might say vat. Or instead of saying we, you might say vi. Now, of course, on the other hand, if you are pronouncing a word with V, like very, don't say wary. So how do we fix this? How do we avoid this mistake? Well, the trick is, of course, making sure that this lip is far enough away from your teeth. Okay? Remember, the F and the V sound are made by bringing that lip up to those top teeth. And so when we get close enough, we're going to get V. And if you go to make a W sound, you might put your lips out. But if you're touching, or you're really, really close to touching with that bottom lip, so it's kind of like this, but it's close to your teeth there. V, v, v. See, we hear that V sound. It's a weird V, but it's a V sound. It's not a W sound. So that's why we need to make sure the mouth is open enough. And also make sure, even if your mouth is open enough, make sure that that bottom lip is not coming up too close. You might have to intentionally sort of try to open a bit more or pull that lip away from these top teeth. V, w, v, w. Now there's very good news and very bad news about the spelling for this sound. The good news is that the W sound is usually, I would say almost always, but not always, spelled with the letter W. So yay, something that makes sense, right? But not so fast. English isn't going to make it that easy for you. The letter W is actually a pretty common silent letter. Now it's not that bad, but some of these you just have to kind of memorize. For example, answer is a very common word that uses a silent W. It is not answer, as well as the WH word who. That's not a voiced or a voiceless W, that's just the H plus oo. And words like whole. Again, this is not any kind of W, it is just an H followed by a vowel. The good news here is that there are actually two very frequent ways that the silent W is used. One is before the R sound at the start of a word or a syllable. For example, wrong, rap, right. But there's a second way to know if the W sound is going to be silent. This usually involves some sort of vowel sound before it. So we know that a very common way to mark the fifth vowel sound compared to the fourth vowel sound, the fourth vowel sound is very often just written with the letter A. But remember, the fifth vowel sound, one of its common spelling patterns is AW. And this is a silent W. It just marks the difference between the fourth vowel and the fifth vowel. Other examples involving vowels would be the word own, which is just the vowel sound O, or with the diphthong ow, which is commonly spelled OW, for example, the word cow. So we don't say cow. See, it's too deep. Cow, cow, cow. Now to really give you a comparison here, let's use the word wow. So we're starting with a W sound, which is very deep. Ooh, ooh. And then we're going to go through the diphthong ow, and at the end of that sound, notice that it's not quite as deep. Wow. Wow. Of course, to make things simpler, if you want to count the end position of O, oo, and ow as a W, as long as you know that we don't really go as deep into a full W, you can call it a W. It's okay. Especially because, remember, if we have any linking or connection between a word that ends in the O, oo, or ow sounds, and we go to another vowel, we're going to connect with that small W sound. So it will sound like a W anyway. So we now know when the W is silent and just spelling, and that leaves us when we actually pronounce it. And that would be at the start of a word or the start of a syllable, as long as it's not one of the cases we mentioned, like the WR combination. But note that there are combinations where the W is pronounced, like the KW combination in words like queen or awkward. At the start of words, we, wish, west, wine, wax, want, one, word, whoa, wow. In the middle of a word, awkward, forward, toward, award. And since we don't use the W sound at the end of words, let's take a look at a couple examples of these combination sounds. Swear, swim, twist, 20, quick, question. And let's not forget about our tongue twister. Repeat after me. We wire westward, where awkward wax wants one wine. We wire westward, where awkward wax wants one wine. We wire westward, where awkward wax wants one wine. I'm really surprised that I got that last one in just one try. So if you have difficulty with this, definitely just keep practicing. Now I have a question for you, but first, a very special thanks to our Patreon supporters. So let me know if this sound was difficult for you, and if so, are you still having difficulty? Or did I help solve your problem with this sound? Thank you so very much for watching another English Hacks lesson, and I will see you in the next one.